Good afternoon. The journey continues. This is Master Yao, and these are the Chronicles of Master Yao. Welcome. We're continuing from episode 12. This is episode 13, I believe. And so we said that we cracked the code. We solved the issue of how to change these embedded underlying epigenetic issues with the black woman. And we did it by the cocoon process. So we said, you got to have 4 to 5 to 6 months where you basically got to snatch her up out of this cesspool of negativity. And then, get her to do these programs that's going to reform her, that's going to revitalize her. It's going to allow her to grow, going to allow her to sort of break free of these parasites, these social parasites that's clinging to her and trying to keep her, in this place. And so, you got to cut these parasites off, cut her connection to this stuff, and and to some extent, she's gotten used to the parasites, and so. It's hard for her to visualize life without the parasites. But you got to cut them off. You got to separate her. You got to, quarantine her. You got to cocoon her. She's got to go on sabbatical from all of that, if anything's going to work. But then after you get her to do that, what are the programs that's going to, accomplish a reformation of a human being in 4 months? What can do that? And you think to yourself, it's an impossible task, an impossible dream. But that's what I do. That's what Jedis do. They dream impossible dreams. And I'm going to describe to you a program that'll do just that. Now, this program that I'm describing now, it's not exactly the same as the one that I actually did, so many years ago, in real life. And since then, we've updated it, and other men have tried it. I've taught other men how to do the cocoon piece, and for them it works even better than it worked for me when I did it. So this all goes back to the house of the woman, and that's the title of the episode today: the house of the woman. And that's what the cocoon process is all about. She goes into the cocoon so that she can rebuild her house of the woman. And we talked about that in the book, so Awakening the Master Masculine. But there's a companion book called Awakening the Master Feminine. I don't got it right now, but that's where we talk about this, right? So then, you say, why can't the woman do all of her wife, mother, sweetheart, seated hawk, queen bee, community leader functions? Why can't she do all of this stuff? Because, she's missing something over here in this house of the woman. These 4 attributes, these 4 archetypes. So that's the moon, the seated hawk, treasure chest, and the elegant rose. And what we did in the cocoon process is we brought in the big guns. We brought in not just the regular stuff that she would do going through puberty, right? We brought in some extra powerful modalities that's going to get this thing done and get it done in a short period of time and work in spite of obstructions. So even though that's going to be obstructions, somebody's going to be trying to stop it from working. This is going to push through. It's going to do it anyway. So it's that kind of thing. It's like, big guns. We got the cannons, okay? So here are the programs themselves. That, so for the moon, you have to remove the womb imprint, and you're dealing with something called quantum field integration. They're both kind of the same thing in a way, but it's serious stuff. So then with the seated hawk faculty, what's going to cause that to break free is integrative hardcore work and ancestor rituals. The elegant rose, what's going to cause that to like snap out of it, wake up and come online right now, you know. So that's what we call active Tantra work, serious stuff. And you know, in companion to that, you got to do this stuff called counterfeit persona remedy or work. And that combination of tantric energy work and CP psychological work, that's some powerful, powerful stuff right there. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. The treasure chest thing, you know, we're dealing with more substance, and you know, in the beginning I did a lot of financial stuff with that, but what I found is that, you know, before you even get to the financial stuff, you really need to deal with the health of the woman first. And as you should deal with both, but you know, we're going to deal with the health thing today. So, and we deal with it a different way. It's called cell rejuvenation, and it's paired with, or it's coupled with, something called orthomolecular nutrition. So, you know, very few people know much about either one of these things. There's books written about them, videos, this and the other, but it's not an easy subject to discuss, because it's looking at things like backwards, totally different. It's, you know, when you first start telling people about cell regeneration, their eyes glaze over, they give you the fluoride stare, and it's like, the hell is he talking about? And you know, they just, you know, they can't do it, because it's like, we don't even understand the concept of what you're saying, you know. So anyway, we're going to try to explain these four things to you and show you why they're so powerful, why they have such a profound and immediate impact on the woman in such a short period of time. Now, when we start talking about the men, you're going to see that the stuff that's easy for the women to fix is hard for the men to fix. When we start talking about the house of the man in this same protocol, you know, it's a real interesting thing. The stuff that the women fought tooth and nail, the men were easy with. The stuff the men fight tooth and nail, the women are easily able to overcome. So we got these four houses of the woman, and we got these four dynamics. The principal dynamic being the energetic marker. So for the moon, womb imprint. Seated hawk, hardcore work. Elegant rose, tantra. Treasure chest, cell rejuvenation. Let's talk about each. Okay. So let's get some admin stuff out the way. So what's the time span of this? What are we talking about? So if you're going to do a full reboot on the woman, a full reboot, boot camp, whatever you want to call it, you know, the complete shebang bang in my Dave Chappelle voice. That's going to take you about a year, about 12 months. That's if you've got a perfect specimen, a woman that's like 18, she ain't been messed up too bad, she haven't had a whole lot of negative experiences with men yet, no real health issues. It's going to take about a year, okay? You get a 50-year-old woman that's had a rough ride in life, so, you know, she's got a couple of major chronic health problems, pretty bad attitude toward men, pretty bad case history. You're talking about around 2 years to do the full reboot, so that she's like 100%, you know? She's functioning like a 35-year-old woman, health issues gone, because see, this thing that I'm talking about, by rebuilding the house of the woman, if you really do that for real, you're going to take care of these health issues. They're going to go, they're going to be gone. Take care of psychological issues, out. Epigenetic issues, you're not erasing them, but they're not able to express themselves. So it's like they've been put to bed, you shut the door, you locked it, they can't really come back online until, you know, 20 years later. Okay. So we're talking between 12 months minimum, 24 months maximum, approximately. Basically then what we're saying is, the woman's got to go into this cocoon phenomena a minimum of 2 times, with a break in between, to a maximum of 4 times. And it may be financially impractical, it may be time-wise, it may be impractical, you know, to do this. It's like, you know, she got kids, she got whatever she's trying to work. So, you know, you might have to do it, you do a year now, wait 2 or 3 years, you do another year, something like that, okay? Understand that in this cocoon process, with all 4 of these things we're talking about, it's a way that they work. You got to understand it. So it starts out energetically. Starts out with an energetic healing, which is really an energetic realignment. Second thing is a psychological rehabilitation. That's the hardest part. The energy stuff, the woman doesn't have to do much but just sit there and, you know, receive the whatever. The psychological thing, she's got to think, she's got to learn, she's got to, you know, give up stuff, sacrifice beliefs and things like that. And then the social thing, the last one, is the hardest of all. You know, then you got to start implementing it. You got to start going out and doing, acting, behaving differently in life, make different choices. Okay, the womb imprint. What are we talking about here? So in the book we talk about the womb imprint, and basically every young girl around the world, you know, when she's first penetrated by men after her menstrual cycle, she's imprinted. And this is an energetic imprint. And her womb, her psychic womb is imprinted, not her uterus. Okay? It's different. So there's a part of her auric field that's imprinted, just like a computer, just like you download a particular application and it changes the registry in your computer. It's imprinted so that anytime you hit that application, it pops up and you can do it. It's the same thing with the woman. It's something programmed into her. It's imprinted based on the energy of the men, right? And the problem is that, you know, these young teenage boys, and it's not always boys, but these men, these boys at that age, when she's vulnerable like that, typically are not positive. And so the imprint that they leave is negative. And once she becomes an adult, it hinders her in her relationship thing in a big way. Needs to be erased. We need to get it out of there. We need to clear that program out, hit the reset button, start from the default setting, and try this again. How do we do that? So the process is energetic. And normally in indigenous society or in an advanced society, you would do it through male penetration. In other words, sexual. A series of sexual acts that are dealing with an energetic thing, so that they're going to change her imprint. But, you know, if her husband, if she's married, or if her boyfriend, if she's in, you know, is not capable to do this, how's she going to get a man to do that without, you know, problem with the boyfriend? So the sexual way is the quick way, but you can do it energetically via something we call table work, which is, you know, a Tantra type thing. But this takes about 10 weeks. It takes a long time to do it. Okay, we're back. We were talking about the womb imprint and how to remove it. And basically, it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. But there is a process, an energetic process to remove it. And once you do, it just radically changes the woman's behavior in relationships. And it you know, affects her appetites, it affects her orgasmic profile, it affects her choices in men, it affects so many things in her life. And it's like lifting a weight off of her heart kind of thing. Okay, the next thing, the second one, dealing with the seated hawk archetype, is called heart interpretive core work. You know, what's that? All of these modalities are difficult to describe. None of them are things, you know, the average person knows anything about, probably haven't even heard of. And yet, you know, that's the thing about the Jedi training. When, you know, in my life before that, you know, a lot of people that I lived with, they never left the county that I grew up in. They might have went to Richmond, you know, or someplace, or Baltimore, or depending on where I was, you know, they might have went to the city to buy, you know, whatever, but basically, they lived their whole life in this one circuit of understanding, this one circuit of presence, so that they read the same newspapers, watched the same TV shows, they listened to the same people, they went to the same churches, they went to, in other words, they never left the proximity of their vicinity in terms of their mental stuff. So there's tons of things going on in the world, you know, in Pakistan, in Russia, in South America, you know, in Africa, in Europe. There's tons of all types of earth-shattering concept systems and things going on all the time. You know, in the United States, people are, you know, publishing doctoral papers to get their doctor's degree, theses, that are mind-blowing every year, thousands, tens of thousands of them. You know, there's just so much going on, so much information that people are ignoring. And so you tend to think, well, woe is me, there's no solutions to the problems we have. Wrong. No, Daffy Dan. Really, really wrong. Really, really silly. That's childish, grade school silly to even think something like that. The problem is you ain't looking. You know, if there's a problem in the world, somebody's already figured out how to solve it. I don't care what it is. You know, whether it's pumping oil, how to teach kids in grade school, how to stop cars fast, you know. If there's a problem in the world, somebody's figured out how to solve it, and they've published it, they've written it down, it's there, somebody's tested it, blah, 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 blah. And so if you don't know the solution to your issue, it's because you haven't looked, and you don't know how to look in the right places. Okay? But, you know, that's part of what you do in the Jedi training, is you learn how to look, and you're always looking, and you're searching, and you know things, and you have these connections, and what you determine is that, you know, the things that we think are insurmountable are not even that big of a problem when you find the right set of solutions. And that's the case here with this whole thing of reforming the black woman. So heart integrative core work is very advanced, very complex system that's hard to describe to someone. But basically, these people go into trance, and while they're in trance, they're able to do this thing where they project energy in a different kind of a way, and they read the heart, and they project this energy into the heart, and it has this impact. And when you first start doing it, it doesn't seem like nothing's happening. You know, the first couple of times that you do it, it's like you come away and you're like, what happened here? I don't think they just took my money. They didn't do nothing. You're like, I feel the same way I did last week, you know. And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. And then after 2 weeks, you're like, wait a minute. Yeah, something big is happening. You feel this glacier moving down the hill, and it's like everything in its path gets wiped out. And you feel this force changing you. You feel this thing in your heart, and you're like, oh no, I was wrong. It's moving slow, but the thing is so big that it's changing my life, you know, boom. And it's like, whoa, I can see this is going to be a big change when it finishes. So you just like, you know, you continue doing the exercises and getting the sessions and whatever, and you just see major stuff change. So this heart integrative core work is like, it's really almost like at the soul level where it's changing you. It can remove trauma. It can change your subconscious. It basically is reprogramming your heart. But You know, it's not like a brain thing. It's like a feeling thing. And it's going back into the past and uprooting all of this poisonous stuff that's got you all jacked up, and slowly, you know, whatever. It's major stuff. And it can even treat, you know, major psychic scars like rape, molestation, incarceration, war, PSTD, post-traumatic stress syndrome kind of thing, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it can deal with that. Okay, active Tantra, number 3. Major guns here. So there's 3 types of Tantra. You got mystical Tantra, yogic Tantra, and active Tantra. So active Tantra is like the stepchild, because, you know, active Tantra, you're using an energy field to do the main types of work, and it's a lot more sexual than the other 2 types of Tantras, because when you're doing active Tantra, there's a lot of arousal, there's a lot of orgasm, and the sexual energy is used, harnessed, managed to do this work. So you're using the sexual energy that most people are like, you know, hey, I'm just trying to get me a little sexual stuff and get me a little orgasm and go on to the next thing. But in active Tantra, no, you're generating the sexual energy, and then you're making it do work. You're making it heal. You can make it generate pleasure, or you can make it generate enlightenment, or you can also use it to like root up these negative feelings and things like that, or help you understand how to deal with the opposite sex. So active Tantra is, you know, the science, is the art of understanding the sexual programming in our genes. What are we saying? In your DNA, in your genes, you have the programming for being a human being. Everything is there already. You don't got to create it. So you already know how to respond to the opposite sex, how to get married, how to mate, how to make love, how to become the highest and best lover you can. That's already in your genes. So what you got to do is wake it up and then understand how to operate it. And so the science of Tantra is the science of waking up your masculine or feminine traits, your sexual traits. And the art of Tantra is, what do you do with them after you wake them up? How do you make it do what it do? And so, you know, Tantra is exceptionally powerful. When you're doing this tantric work, its ability to change the opposite sex is almost infinite. We don't know the limits of it yet, but we've seen some major changes come about as that. In fact, you know, with the tantric modality by itself, coupled with the counterfeit personality, of course, you could probably deal with almost all 14 of those factors we talked about before, almost all of them, just with the Tantra and the CP work. And when I say CP, counterfeit persona, that counterfeit persona stuff, we talked about that, goes hand in hand with the tantric work. So you do the tantric energy work on the table, massage table, and then you turn around and you do the counterfeit persona work, which is psychological training. And then the 2 of them combined will renovate, will, you know, create this reformation. Okay, last one is cell regeneration. Oh, let me just mention one more thing. So, you know, unlike hardcore work and the other spiritual, energetic things, Tantra requires that the person that's getting the work consent. And they have to cooperate. They have to be receptive to it. And only the opposite sex can do it. So women have to have a man to do the work. Men have to have a woman to do the work on them when you're doing tantric work. You know, official, active Tantra work, authentic. Cell rejuvenation regimens. Again, you know, it's something that is hard to define because very few people know that much about it. It's relatively new. Tantra is like 5,000 years old. Cell rejuvenation is almost brand new. So, you know, most people in the modern world look at health from the outside in. In other words, they're looking at it macrocosm. So they're saying, what do you have to eat? What does the body need? You know, what's the exercise and these. In other words, they're saying, okay, what are the things that are affecting health? And they're basically talking about chemicals. So they're saying you got to get these chemicals from the food, biological chemicals. You got to get these chemicals from supplements, nutrients. You got to get these chemicals from drugs, artificial chemicals, synthetic chemicals. But basically they're talking chemicals. And they're saying we're going to put these chemicals in your mouth, whatever, in your vein, and but your systems, your organs, and your bloodstream has to then do something with these chemicals and take them and put them inside your cells. And then we're hoping your cells know what to do with it once we put it in there. So cell rejuvenation is the opposite of that. Cell rejuvenation says, nix the macrocosmic stuff. Let's focus on the microcosmic. Let's focus on the cell unit itself. So we want to look at the cell, try to get a reading on the cell, and we just want to send something there that starts to change things inside the cell itself. We don't want to send nutrients. We don't want to send food, chemicals in there. We want to send electricity in the form of an electromagnetic field. And basically what they're saying is we want to change the magnetic field inside the cells. And we believe that if we change that magnetic field inside the cells, it's going to change the way the cell interacts with nutrients, water, oxygen, all this kind of stuff. That the transport of amino acids is changed, the DNA translation in the RNA is changed, and the nucleotides and all that stuff like that operate differently. Now, some of the times that you do this, you don't get much of a result because it's kind of a trial and error when you're picking the frequencies and the type of electromagnetic fields to induce inside the cells. Because it's not changing the electromagnetic field of the entire human body. No. It's just inside the cells. So that's different. You kind of think the cells are me, but really the cells are inside of a lot of stuff. So you got blood, lymph, and connective tissues, out surrounding the cells. So there's outside the cell, inside the cell. And the point is that once you start changing these fields inside the cells, some of them are going to have no beneficial effect, and some of them are going to be like, oh my God, that's really doing some good. So you want to optimize that, keep generating that to its maximum, and when you get the result, then you move to the next phase, the next octave higher than that, in that same family, and you just keep doing that until you go through the whole circuit of what you can do with that. And that has, major impact on the physical body and the epigenetic scenario. Okay? It's a slow process, though. I mean, it's not something. It's like the hardcore work. You don't really see any impact the first time you do it. It's like you don't really, it doesn't seem like it's making any difference. Then after a week or two, you're like, okay, this is some powerful stuff here. Okay, so that's those are the four things. Now, I know I didn't give you much of a description of them, and it's kind of hard to do. But, there are things that have been tested, people have been using it in other parts of the world and whatever, and they work. They work extremely well. And in terms of the cell thing, I think that there's a few things that work better. Stem cell migration, and that's some really expensive alternative type new things that have come down the pipe that work better than cell rejuvenation. But if you're going to go cheap and quick, cell rejuvenation is your boy. And that's the same thing. All of these things, all of these modalities are non-invasive. You don't require any drugs, no needles. You don't have to do anything inside the body. It's mainly energetic. It costs money, but not a lot. Not as much as this other stuff. And they're highly effective, all of them. Highly effective. Way more effective than all this other stuff that people are doing. But there is a downside to these four modalities. But it's not what you think. So, The main downside is the logistics of the cocoon process. That's the main issue, you know. The fact that it takes a lot of coordination and logistics and getting things together to do a cocoon process. And without that, you can't do this other stuff. The other downside issue is that there's a lot of resistance to any type of healing program from the person trying to be healed. So, you know, black women are definitely going to resist something like that. They're going to be like, there's going to be major resistance from black women if you try to do any type of healing like that. That's that pervasive. They're not going to stand by and just cooperate. They're going to resist, and they're going to resist strenuously. And in my opinion, you can't do this without the cocoon dynamic, the sabbatical component. And in my opinion, you know, whatever resistance you get, you're going to have to try to figure out a way to get around that. Now, of course, what's the 900-pound elephant in the room? Black men. So immediately, you know, you start saying to yourself, well, how are we going to do all of this if we don't change black men too? Absolutely true. We're going to deal with that in another episode, but let's just talk about the black man. During this, from my 30th birthday to my 40th birthday, what were these black men, my male peers, doing? The state of affairs of the black male during that time period was pretty bad. Sexually, I would estimate most of them were dysfunctional. They were not sexually mature. They were not capable. They were not functioning like they should have been sexually. Financially, they were doing pretty good. So they were okay financially. Epigenetically, black men were scarred. They were damaged. Not the same way black women were, and not to the same extent. They were experiencing more cultural damage, more damage from prison and lack of sovereignty and things like that, but not the same issues as the woman was undergoing. It's the cultural piece that black men were really lacking, and they were having a real bad. Basically, culturally, black men were lost during that time period, completely lost. It was, you know, chasing after the wrong stuff, not really understanding. They just didn't really have any cultural anchor at all. And probably one of the worst things that I observed with black men during this time period, from my 30s to early 40s, is they had no relationship ethics. They got no ethics. Remember, we talked about the fact, form versus function. That was black men. They had the form, they had the goals correct, no functionality. In other words, you know, they didn't understand what you got to do to operate, and they didn't have the whole code of honor thing down. Their ethics and relationships was deplorable. And not all of them, but the majority of them, which is bad. And basically, put it in succinctly, they felt it was okay to lie. They just, you know, they had stopped understanding that lying was bad. It's like, you know, maybe 200 years ago, they knew lying was bad. But you know, you live in a culture where the white community lies all the time. In fact, the government is official, makes it official. It has an official policy of always lying. So, you know, anything the government in the United States says is basically a lie. And everyone lies continuously, as we talked about in number one. It's part of the pattern of how they are. And you know, the Europeans have gotten to this point in the United States. Europeans around the world aren't all like that, thank God. But it's like, the ones in the United States have just gotten into this place where they just habitually lie. It's so common and it's so expected that, you know, that people have gotten, that black men have gotten into this place where they think it's okay to do that. It's not. And so they just lie. Their ethics are deplorable. And so they don't have the functionality. So their goals are okay, their form is okay. They're trying to deal with some of these difficult issues. And they want the relationship to progress, but there's some fundamental things you got to respect if that's going to happen. And black men did not have that. So yes, they had some pretty severe relationship problems, the black men did in that time period. And of course, since then, they've gotten worse. But they weren't trying to wreck the relationship, the boat of relations, like the black woman was. They didn't have these goals that were screwed up so that, even if they got to where they wanted to go, things were going to crash. They were not trying to steer the relationship over the Niagara Falls. And so, what had to happen for black men was different than what had to happen for black women. And bottom line, black men were not a corrective force, which is what part of their role should be. They should be able to correct women so that they can, get straight. They weren't doing that. And so my point is, in order for this program of reformation of women to work, there has to be a special training for black men who are going to take part in that, the ones who are going to be the cocooners. They would have to undergo, an upgrade. They would have to deal with some issues and go through something before they would be really suitable to cocoon a woman. So let's put that caveat there. So yes, the cocoon thing will work, but yeah, you're going to have to upgrade these black men before they can do that. Okay. So we're going to talk about this whole process with the men in great detail in future episodes. But, notwithstanding everything that we've said up to now, the resistance to a reformation program of this scope would be formidable. I'm talking about resistance from black women. It would be off the charts. And the reason for this is not what you think. Currently, the majority of women exist daily in their pain bodies. That's where they're existing. And if you're not really trained to look at things in a certain type of way, you don't see this. You think that people are just existing normally and naturally, but they're not. And you must understand that the average typical woman today lives her daily life in her pain body, not in her other emotional bodies. There is an active martyr culture within black female culture because it has an overall feminist mindset. This martyr complex is deeply embedded, and it's a cycle of self-pity and feeling marginalized, and you're the underdog and this kind of thing like that. And it builds upon itself, and it's all of these things that's kind of like, woe is me, and everything is not going to be good, and we can't trust the black man, and black people brand, and all that stuff like that. But the real issue is that within this overall population of women that, sort of like dealing with a psychosomatic issue, you got a subgroup within that, a population of black women who actually are dealing with that, who are dealing with rape, who are dealing with molestation, who are dealing with abuse, unemployment, all of this stuff like that, who are rejected by black men. So you got the one group up here with the martyr complex and whatever, kind of like going through a psychological thing, but then you got another smaller group down here that's catching hell. And they're experiencing these things that this group is talking about on a daily basis for real. And here's the problem. The women in the general community see what's happening to the women in the subgroup who are actually experiencing this hell. And they believe, okay, this can happen to me. because they're in proximity to these women. And so it's like, yes, I really haven't had a whole lot of issues in my life, even though I'm pretending that I did, you know, and the issues could have been easily dealt with, but, you know, they're clinging to them with the martyr complex. And then you got this other group of women, and they've been catching hell. So it's like, you know, you got to understand that with this whole piece, a lot of it is like, it's not real. In other words, for most women, the problem that they have to receiving a healing, there's really no issue there. But it seems real to them because the women who are in that group of women suffering, they know some of them. They see this issue. They've heard about it. You know, and it's close. It's not in another country. It's not in Afghanistan. It's not in Egypt. It's in the next county. It's in the next subdivision. It's close. And so they believe that they're not secure. They believe it can happen to them. And that's just as bad, in some cases, as if it did. And so the other side of this is that if this whole reformation process is going to work, if the cocoon process is going to work, if these very powerful modalities of healing can work, this removing the womb imprint, all of this stuff is major, heavy-duty canons. If the heart integrative work and the Tantra and all that stuff is going to work, then a certain select group of black men, not all of them, but just the spokesmen, have got to convince this group of black women that, you know, that it's safe to go outside, that it's okay to take a chance. And I think that's the other component of this that's got to happen, you know, all right? So there's reason to be optimistic, because, you know, definitely it seems like the problem is insurmountable. We can't change it. It's too bad. It's too big. No, not at all. It's definitely surmountable. It's definitely you can deal with it. And in fact, in a year, you can do it. Okay? All right. That's the end of the episode. I hope you'll give me a lot of comments talking about why this isn't going to work. Okay? And I appreciate you following this. I know the women are saying, when are we going to talk about the men? When? Okay, so we got about 2 or 3 more things to deal with. Then we're going to start on the whole series with the men, and then, you know, we'll do what we got to do. But in the meantime, I hope you'll consider what we're saying. Don't be so down and out like everything was me. And Wakanda forever.